Okay, I am trying to share my screen, but I'll just start the video. Greetings, everyone. I would like to again extend my warm welcome to all dignitaries, Dr. Levi, Mr. Obi Malope, Mr. Masimula, Dr. Diane, and our distinguished guests today, all optometrists joining in for the session, and to my wonderful colleagues, optometry students across Africa. I am Aphelele Poshia Madikiza, the president of the African Federation of Optometry Students, also known in short as AFOS. I am both honored and grateful for the opportunity to be opening such a groundbreaking and never done before general meeting, where not only optometry students are gathered in one place from all corners of Africa, but we have in our midst such revolutionary and respectable professional optometrists that are contributing to the betterment of our beloved profession. We, as the executive board of AFOS, are eternally grateful for your time and presence. As we all have seen the theme of the AFOS AGM 2024, it is the 21st century optometrist, the role of AFOS in shaping optometry in Africa. Now, the statement 21st century optometrist provokes a thought of how does a 21st century optometrist look like, or what are the attributes that come in mind when one thinks of who a 21st century optometrist is? I then thought of all the optometrists that have worked together for the legitimizing and sealing the importance and need of optometry beyond a health standpoint, but in a socioeconomic aspect as well. The recognition of the dire need of eye care in Africa and also other continents that are like our own continent. It is due to the advocacy work and research done by optometrists, which in one way or the other has shed light on the realities that our communities face, which then set in motion global initiatives such as the SPECS 2030 that the World Health Organization has established. As AFOS, we have also been encouraged to revive a number of student VOS chapters, which have also carried out missions across Africa in the year 2024. There are also a number of other notable initiatives that were birthed from optometrists standing together to ensure that eye health issues are addressed in curbing the ever-increasing vision impairment that is curable with refractive correction and or early detection and management of diseases. So with that being said, I would like to give a few attributes of what I believe shapes the 21st century optometrist. To me, the 21st century optometrist is fearless, competent, persistent, and has the ability to collaborate and is resilient in showing excellence in the work that they do. The 21st century optometrist has great adaptability to the ever-evolving technology and ensures quality care is rendered to all. The 21st century optometrist is you and I. So let's be bold and courageous and take up space in flying the optometric flag high, optometry students. As optometry rises in Africa, Africa will also rise. And on behalf of all students in Africa, to all of the organizations and optometrists, such as Dr. Levi, Dr. Adaku, Dr. Grace, Dr. Timothy, that have supported, and all other optometrists, which I cannot name right now, we are greatly and deeply thankful that you have supported the student, that you have equipped us and are still equipping us with the knowledge and education that we need to thrive in the optometry world. And with that being said, thank you all for joining in. And I do declare that the first ever AFOS AGM is now in session. Over to you, Ms. Chinelo, or if Mr. Stanley is back, our anchor. And yeah, I'm finished now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Afelele. That was a very striking opening remark. Okay, I'm supposed to take the next session. Please, can we just confirm that we can hear me?
You're audible, yes.
All right. So I'll be taking the next session, which is an overview of AFOS's history and vision for the future. My name is Chinelo Ikeli, and I am the Secretary General of AFOS. So first off, what is AFOS? AFOS is an acronym for the African Federation of Optometry Students. As the name implies, it is a federation where optometry students who are Africans are gathered together to make our voice heard, to fill up spaces instead of just standing in the sidelines. The founder is Dr. Uchechukwu Levi Uswago, Senior Lecturer and Academic Lead, Rural Health School of Medicine, Bathurst Rural Clinic School, Western Sydney University. So AFOS launched on 30th March 2024. Dr. Levi thought it wise that it would be nice for such an organization to exist, and he wanted it to be student-led, to be a student thing. And so AFOS launched on 30th March 2024 with 2 representatives from each institution. And then over time, we've grown to become so large. We currently have established contact with over 30 plus optometry schools in Africa. We have reps from each of them. And to foster this student-led initiative, we elected the first executive team on the 11th of May, 2024. Now, one thing that has led us through this time till now is the vision, the understanding that through AFOS, our voices will no longer be whispers, but rather will be resounding calls for change. We are knocking on doors, we are entering rooms, we're establishing relationships, we're building and demanding a place at the table and a platform to speak. We, like the team implies, the 21st century optometries, we are the generation that doesn't wait for opportunities to come to us, but rather we are creating these opportunities. Now, continuation of the introduction. AFOS has had meetings, introductory meetings, and talks of future collaboration with a number of organizations, number one being the American Academy of Optometry. We've also had meetings with VOSH International, and we took it a step further with VOSH by reviving student VOSH chapters in the different universities across Africa in order for these universities to carry out local vision missions. For example, my school today had a health outreach, and it was co-sponsored by VOSH, and we visited secondary and primary schools, giving glasses, taking students, just giving them educative measures and everything they need to know about taking care of their eyes, as well as dispensing glasses. This was all made possible because AFOS had a meeting with VOSH and decided to revive the student VOSH chapters in different schools and revived my school's chapter, and now we could do something like this. The third meeting we've had is with Africademic, talking about scholarships being made available for African students. We've also had a meeting with the executive board of the African Council of Optometry, where we discussed future collaborations, including student sponsorship towards the AFCO conference that was held in September 2024 in Uganda. Through AFOS, we were able to send a number of students to Uganda for the AFCO conference, and it's something I'm really proud that we could achieve. And this same discussion, this same meeting also fostered the relationship we have with AFCO currently, as we'll be having the current AFCO president as one of the speakers tomorrow. The fifth meeting we've had is with the International Association for Prevention of Blindness. We had this meeting on the 8th of October, 2024. Now, AFOS has done a number of things, but we're looking forward to a number of things as well. And to every student out there, we would like to say that the benefit of an optometry student becoming an AFOS member is enormous. We don't even know the end of it, but we could just summarize to say you get an opportunity to have networking opportunities, you have access to educational resources, you get to be part of advocacy and representation, you get to develop leadership skills, you get to have access to mentorship, research skill development, career development and job opportunities, scholarship and sponsorship, just to name a few. Another thing we'd like to announce is before now, we've been having just our social media platforms as the place where AFOS members get to interact. But we'll be launching our WhatsApp group chats for as many that are registered AFOS members to get the access to this WhatsApp group on their mails. So if you're a registered AFOS member, please check your mails. You get the access to that WhatsApp group. Now, finally, education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world. It is something we believe very strongly here at AFOS. Have a wonderful meeting. I do encourage you to listen. I do encourage you to ask questions. Where in doubt, ask questions and do drop your support. Have a wonderful AGM. Thank you. All right, since Stanley is still not back, if he's not back, I'll continue. So our first guest speaker would be Dr. John Kwesi Asan. I really do hope I pronounced that well, but if I didn't, you can correct me later, sir. So Dr. John Asan, I'll just read his bio, is an accomplished optometrist and a PhD candidate in vision science and physiological optics at the University of Houston. He holds a Doctor of Optometry degree from the School of Optometry and Vision Science, University of Cape Coast, Ghana. In 2022, Dr. John received the American Academy of Optometry Foundation's first international grant, earning his fellowship at the San Diego annual meeting as the youngest African to achieve this distinction. His research focuses on early detection and management of retinal and systemic eye diseases. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. John Asan. You have the mic.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. I hope I'm heard. Am I audible enough?
Very audible, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everybody. I know we are all joining from different parts of the world. Here in Houston, it is just about 30 minutes past 12. So I'm glad that all of us are able to join at this time. And I'm humbled to be invited to speak at this first annual general meeting of the African Federation of Optometry Students. Thank you to the leadership, and thank you all for making time to join this meeting. Okay, now you've updated it. Said I have 25 minutes for the address. Initially it was 10 minutes, and so thank you for this update. I tried to prepare to stay within 10 minutes, but now I have extra time, and so I will give more detail when I need to. Thank you so much. My topic, or what I'm going to share about, two things that I want to talk about today. First, to share my journey to fellowship with the American Academy of Optometry, and then to also share my journey in research. Yeah, make no mistake, don't think I'm some experienced researcher right now. I'm still learning, I'm still in the process, but I guess I have a few things I want to share with all of us, and then hopefully this would be an inspiration to all of us, including myself, on how to keep on putting our best foot forward in everything that we are doing. Great. So I've shared a few slides. I would like to, okay, I believe, can you all see the slides, please?
Yes, I can see.
Yeah. Okay, great. Great. All right. Okay. Okay, great. All right. So the slide is moving. All right. So like I said, I'm going to start with my journey to fellowship with the Academy. And then we'll talk a little bit about my research journey. And then I have a few takeaways, very brief, that I would want us to look at. And then I will have some time for questions as well. Okay. So my journey to fellowship started with just a desire. And I know for my colleagues, my friends who have joined, everybody has a desire to be the best they can be as clinicians and as academics. In our part of the world, in Africa, the motivation to go to the next level usually stems from one's own self, a desire to make a positive impact. I like to use this analogy. So just imagine having a horse, right? Just imagine possessing a horse. And then you tie this horse to some post, or you keep the horse in maybe a cage or something like that. If the horse decides not to make any effort to escape, the horse is always going to stay either tied up or caged up. But the moment the horse decides that I've had enough of this, I want to be free, that would be the beginning of a change. And so for me, it started with a simple desire to serve my patients better. At that time, I had just graduated from the University of Cape Coast with my Doctor of Optometry degree, and I was serving in the same institution as a teaching assistant and a research assistant for the faculty. I had seen one of our faculty become a fellow about 2 years prior to my graduation. And from that time, I became curious. I started reading about the academy. I started learning as much as I could. I went to the academy website, watching videos, watching videos of former or people who had become fellowships in prior years. I was reading about the awards that the Academy offers, the opportunities that the Academy offers, the support the Academy offers, even in vision science research, aside clinical work. And so I was very, very encouraged by the fact that there was an opportunity to make a difference. So I made it a point to join. And then I looked at the requirements. So at that time, in fact, now things have changed. At that time, there were two routes. At that time, either you went through the scientific route or the clinical route. There was the leadership route, but it wasn't very common among us as Africans. In fact, it was only recently that we had the first African become a fellow through the leadership route. And so that was pretty new to us at that time. And also there was the opportunity to use the leadership route and also to combine. So either you have maybe a case report or a leadership essay of your contributions, both locally and internationally, or a scientific paper of which you are first author in a journal that is recognized by the academy. So there were all these requirements. And at some point I felt like, am I really sure I can do this? Because remember, I had just graduated from school. I had started seeing patients and I was a bit skeptical. And so I did talk to Dr. Okansi. He was one of the member of faculty who had become a fellow about 2 years earlier. I spoke to him. I spoke to another fellow from Ghana, Dr. Obedamwa Smith, and I reached out to the leadership of the academy at the time, especially the leadership in charge of membership, with questions about whether I could really do this at that time and that young. And the answers were consistent. John, this is what we want. You are more than welcome to start the process to be a fellow, and we will support you all the way. These are the requirements. You can go through the clinical route, or if you have any papers, you can send them for review and stuff like that. But I want to talk about the real motivation behind or beyond me wanting to serve my patients better. What that meant was I needed to keep abreast with evidence-based practice. In Africa, the optometry landscape is different than other parts of the world in the sense that we see a myriad of cases that, especially in the rural parts of Africa, we see a myriad of cases that sometimes you might not even know where to start from. Imagine you have a severe fungal keratitis from, maybe a patient from an area that is predominantly a farming area where the risk of contracting some of these types of keratitis is high. If you have such a case in your clinic, then where to start from to manage the case becomes problematic because the presentation of those cases is usually they present at the end stage, right? When the case is already advanced and severe. And so the need to stay abreast with evidence-based approach for me was very important because I did not want to start treating patients using unconventional ways or ways that have not been demonstrated to work in literature to end up causing more trouble both to the patient and to myself, right? So I had that motivation to be abreast. If it's fungal keratitis, what is the first line of action? If it is primary open angle glaucoma, what is the first line of action? If it is a low vision case, what is the first line of action, right? So that was one of the motivations. And let me just put this out. The academy provides this kind of support for clinicians to be able to stay abreast, especially at the annual meetings. You have the chance to attend so many workshops that would afford the opportunity to learn what are the new trends in managing the disease. So yes, the AAO was a fantastic place to start. And the commitment of the AAO to lifelong learning was also a very key aspect of what motivated me. Because as clinicians, we don't just complete our degrees and start seeing patients and that ends it. No, we need to stay abreast with new trends. We need to, if there are new conditions that come up. Recently, the world was introduced to the COVID-19. This is just an example to show that disease changes. We might have new diseases coming up, current diseases changing in their presentation. And so lifelong learning is something we cannot escape as clinicians, right? So all these were parts of what motivated me to get my fellowship. Now let's look at how I went about it. So I used the clinical route to obtain my fellowship. I submitted 5 case reports from the most complex cases I had seen, even as a young clinician at that time. And one thing that was to my benefit was the fact that the University of Cape Coast at that time, we had a clinic in the department. Now it's a school. We had a clinic that we were running, and we had a collaboration with the main hospital, the University of Cape Coast Hospital, where we had an eye clinic running. The benefit of that was that I was able to consult in both places, and especially in the hospital, more cases came there that were complex. For example, advanced cases of glaucoma, advanced cases of binocular vision anomaly, anterior segment disease, retinal disease like ocular toxoplasmosis and the likes. And so there were so many cases I was seeing. Now, when I started writing my cases to become a fellow, to submit the cases to my subcommittee chair, one thing that I noticed was that I had the chance to refresh my memory and learn new things compared to what I'd learned from my pathology class in school. For example, the glaucoma case I submitted was one that was comorbid with high myopia, right? And so we had all this presentation of the retinal stretching, resulting in lacquer cracks, resulting in an abnormally large optic disc, a very high degree of myopia. I think the patient had about minus 15 diopters of myopia, also having glaucoma. And so, that workup to diagnose glaucoma came from the fact that we have the eyeball that is stretching, but that could also be the reason why there is an RNFL thinning. So is it really glaucoma, or are we seeing RNFL thinning in the OCT results because the eyeball is simply stretching, right? So because of this, I needed to do extensive workup, checking IOPs at every visit, doing pachymetry, corneal thickness, and all that, right? So at the end of the day, I had learned more than I knew, at least from my pathology class. And thankfully, I wanted to do this in the quickest way possible, not compromising on quality, but to afford myself the opportunity to learn from the cases I was writing. Okay, so I normally for fellowship you are given 3 years to complete, but I aimed to complete this in less than 6 months. And the reason for that was that I wanted to stay on my feet and keep learning. And mind you, these were cases I had started seeing about a year prior. And so I had all the reviews, I had all the workup done. But when I started writing, I knew that I had to put in more effort, especially in the workup, right? And this is an encouragement to all of us as students. You have the opportunity to advance your clinical skills just by doing fellowship with the academy, because as you go through the process, you learn new things, you get to some roadblocks that you need to consult. You need to consult the literature or speak to more experienced clinicians. In doing all that, you better yourself as a young clinician, at least from my experience. And I believe that this is true. I know I speak for Dr. Levy and Dr. Some of our senior optometrists here when I say that the more you do it, the better you get. Right. So that was, thankfully, my cases were approved after being reviewed by at least two members of my subcommittee chair. And then I had to take the oral exam. At that point, I had a roadblock. Here I was, and somebody who had just not spent so many years out of school yet. So what that meant was I did not have a lot of money in my account to book a ticket to go to the US to sit the oral exam, right? That was a challenge. So I planned with my subcommittee chair that I'm not able to attend, but if you can give me the opportunity to do this online, I would appreciate it. But he said something. He said, John, you have put in so much effort in your written requirements, and I have seen you grow throughout that period. And I want to do whatever I can to make sure that at least you can come and experience the academy for yourself. True to his words, he approached the board, the American Academy of Optometry board, and then he made a proposition that, hey, there are some of our candidates who are coming from less privileged parts of the world. Can we put together something that can support them so that we can have them also represented? And that kickstarted the annual International Travel Award grant. And thankfully, I was fortunate to be the first recipient of that award. And that gave me the chance to fly to the United States to sit for my oral exam and also to participate in the academy meeting. It was fantastic. Like I've been reiterating the opportunity to see evidence-based practice, to see the new trends and to learn them. It was just amazing, right? So this is a challenge to all of us as students. It is very easy to give up when there are challenges. But I just want to encourage us that the challenge is not the end of the road. I believe that the challenge is the stepping stone to making a difference. The challenge is a stepping stone to making a difference. So let's embrace the challenges that come our way, even as students, even as young optometrists, even as people starting our career. It is those challenges that will be the stepping stones at the end of the day. So that's because of the time, I would want to switch gears to talk a little bit about my research journey. I'm sure you are wondering why I wanted to do research, because I mentioned earlier that I wanted to serve my patients better. So that's my motivation. Tomorrow's practice depends on today's research. I don't know how many of you are student clinicians right now. Maybe some of you are still in the early years. I know some of you are seeing patients already. I want to believe that you might have encountered some cases that are out of the book, some cases that you don't know how to even manage, right? That was my experience. There were so many cases that I had seen that, from the literature or from my pathology class at least, we didn't know how to manage. A simple example is glaucoma. We don't have a cure right now, but we have ways of managing it. So that was my motivation. Okay, let's go into research and see what we could also contribute to be able to find answers to the questions that we have as clinicians. And that was why that was my motivation for enrolling in a PhD in vision science program at the University of Houston. Currently, my research is focused on the emmetropization, foveal maturation, but by extension, I want to be looking at ways to detect early diseases by looking at just the retina. We know that if just by ophthalmoscopy, you can see signs of diabetic retinopathy, hypertensive retinopathy, but when it gets to that stage that you can see it, it's actually too late. If you can see drusen's and edema and all that, at that point, it is too late. But can we find ways to detect some of these diseases earlier from some of the biomarkers in the retina? So that is my motivation for research. One thing that prepared me for this research journey was my final year project at the University of Cape Coast. And I know for all of us, we have some kind of project that we do as part of our training. I just want to encourage us, let's take it seriously, because you never know where that would take you. Also, service. I had the opportunity to serve as a research assistant and teaching assistant in the same institution I graduated from, and that prepared me for what I'm doing right now. Little did I know that I would switch gears into research immediately after school, or not too long after school. But here am I benefiting from that training I had from UCC. Key takeaways that I just want to conclude with. Everything starts with a vision, but a vision alone is not enough. You need to take the action before you can get the results. And so please keep going no matter what, and you are going to be at the top. Thank you so much for your time. I believe that we will take questions before we move to the next speaker. So I'll just pause here and then take questions. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jonathan. Such an inspirational and insightful story being taken through the whole process that you went through in becoming a fellow. And we definitely for myself, changing my perspective and my feelings towards research, because it's quite a field that needs someone who's persistent and patient. And I took the last key points as well, that the VAR. I watch soccer, so I just made it a short acronym. The V for vision, the A for action, and the result. It's like the analogy that you just told us, that you just told us now, that be like the horse. Don't allow to be stuck in one place. Try to escape. I really love that analogy. And now, chat, we are open for questions, and Dr. John will answer your questions, and you can just type them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, and then the floor is yours.
I think there's a question in the chat box. Ifya Nichuku is asking, please, can I apply for fellowship as a student, or must I be a graduate and get inducted before starting the application process? Very good question. So look, the requirement of the academy is that you must be an independent clinician to be a fellow, especially if you want to go through the clinical route. But if you are a student and you have first author papers, even as a student, then you can start, because a paper is a paper, a publication is a publication. And if you're first author, even as a student, you can start the process, right? But for the clinical route, you need to be an independent clinician. So what that means is that you should have completed your studies, you should have graduated, and then at least received your provisional license in whatever jurisdiction you're at before you can start the clinical route. Yeah, that's my answer to that.
Thank you very much, Dr. John, for that answer. I'm not sure I got, you said first something. I'm not sure I got that word.
Okay, let me back up. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, John.
Yeah, so what I was saying was there are so many pathways to become a fellow of the academy. Let me start with the research route or the scientific route. If as a student, you have first authored papers, even as a student, you are more than welcome to start the process through the scientific route, right? If you're first author and you published in a journal that is approved by the academy, there is nothing that stops you from starting the process. But if you want to go through the clinical route where you are submitting clinical cases you have seen, then you must be an independent clinician at the time of writing that case report. So what that means is that you should have graduated from your studies and at least obtained your provisional license that allows you to see patients. Then you can go through the clinical route, right? But if I know Nathaniel was one of the student leaders in the University of Cape Coast optometry. So he has some leadership contributions in optometry, at least locally. So somebody like Nat can start applying to become a fellow using that leadership contribution, at least with a 1,200 worded essay for 10 points or a 6,000 worded essay for all the 50 points. He can start, but as a clinician, you should complete your studies.
Yeah, and just to add to that, John, I think that's very clear. The other thing is, you may be a member of the academy, student member, without being a fellow. So you can become a member of the academy and still have all the resources available to you from the website, but you're going to be a fellow, as John has just extended. Maybe 1 year after clinical, your graduation, you have your license to practice, that you can demonstrate that you have your degree. So that is a different route. So if you want to be a member, it's open to student membership, but again, you cannot be a fellow while you're still a student.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Levy, for adding to that. I think there's another question.
There's another question in the chat. I would read. It says
Yes.
here, please, is the number of cases for clinical routes limited to just 5 cases?
Okay, great. This is a very good question too. So let me back up a bit. In the written, so after you have applied to become a fellow of the academy, your application needs to be approved. Now, after going through that stage, you move on to the written requirements stage, where you submit your case report or publications or leadership contribution essays and whatnot. Your goal is to accumulate 50 points at this stage, right? Each case report is 10. And so if you are using the clinical route strictly, then what that means is that you need 5 case reports. But let's take it that you have 2 case reports and you have 3 first author papers. You're welcome to combine, right? In consultation with your subcommittee chair. You just need to let them know that, oh, I have 2 case reports. If you have a master's or a PhD or some advanced degree, that alone gives you 20 points, right? So let's take an example. Somebody who has a PhD, so that's 20 points, who has been able to write a 1,200 worded essay on leadership contribution in optometry, whether locally or internationally. That's 10 points. So we have 30. This person can decide to write 2 case reports and get 20 points from there and then have 50 points in all, right? So it just depends on the approach and what you have to start the process.
Thank you, Dr. John. Okay, I think there was an additional question. Okay, Dr. Levi already answered that. Okay, for me, I have a question actually. I have a question as regards picking your final year research topic. So we've been taught a lot of things, basically dragged around a lot of angles, a lot of areas to have interest in. How do you finally pick an area of interest. How do you fine-tune it to ensure it's actually relevant enough for any of the feats you want to achieve? Relevant, or you were saying to take it seriously. How do you ensure this topic or whatever your focus is going to be would be something taken seriously by others and not just seriously by yourself? I don't know if you get my question.
I totally understand your question, and I totally understand where that question is coming from, because I find myself asking myself those same questions. But here's what I will say. Research is it's like cooking a meal and then serving that meal for others to partake of it, right? How you present it will determine to a very large extent whether people would be interested in it or not. And this is true for whatever area of research you want to join. The most important thing in research is being able to communicate your findings in a way that would attract the audience and attract the support that you need in terms of grants, etc. But bringing it down to your what you asked about how to leverage on your final year project, what I would say is that if you have the opportunity, choose a topic that you are passionate about, a topic that even when things are not going well in the research, you would be happy and eager to wake up every morning to go back to the lab or to go back to collect data, right? Because if you're not excited about the work you are doing and things go wrong, the next thing you'll be thinking about is to give up, is to just close the chapter. But if you have an intrinsic motivation about that topic, right, then that is a sign that, okay, I want to do research in this area, because if it's not going well, I'll be eager to find out why it's not working to make it work, right? But if you don't care about it, then it becomes difficult to stay motivated. Okay, and also I think that another aspect of it is being able to find a lab or a mentor or supervisor that you would be a good fit for. Good fit is very important, because if you and your advisor do not match or are not a good fit, then it might affect your output in the research, because your advisor might be thinking in a different way, you're also looking at it in a different way, different approach, and then it becomes a problem moving forward. Okay, so in making a choice, you want to choose something you are interested in, excited about, get a mentor that you're a good fit for, right? And then that is a good place to start. But again, along the line in research, as I know that Dr. Levy I know I speak for Dr. Levy, and when I say that in research, you change gears as you keep going. What I mean by that is, there may come a time where you might need to switch the area depending on different factors that are going on, the availability of logistics or resources or grants to support that topic. And so you might not have all the answers from the beginning, but as you keep going, you might find the answers as you keep going.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. John. I think that's really helpful. Okay, we'll take one more question and then we can call it a successful session. Someone dropped a question here. It says, does a higher GPA increase the chances to be eligible for fellowship application? Like, does GPA play any factor at all?
To the best of my knowledge, no. You just need to graduate, right? And so I believe that every school has requirements needed for you to be able to graduate. So that is what the academy wants to see, that you successfully completed your studies and that you did not, maybe you were not withdrawn or you did not fail or something like that, right? So that's a simple answer to that question.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. I was going to say Dr. Levi, Dr. John. We're wrapping up the Q&A session right now. This was very interesting. I would just like to add that we would definitely like to have your slide if you could forward to us so we can just share with everyone. But thank you so much. Can we please give an appreciation clap or something to just show Dr. John that we're really grateful for the time he spent with us today to share with us his wisdom. We don't take it for granted at all. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on. Thank you. We're going to be introducing our very next speaker. Tonight has been interesting so far. Afelele, would you like to do that?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll do that, Janella. Thank you so much. I have the honor of introducing our second speaker, Professor Ruth Shoge. Professor Ruth Shoge is a distinguished optometrist specializing in pediatric eye care, vision therapy, and binocular vision disorders. She earned her Doctor of Optometry from the Pennsylvania College of Optometry and a Master of Public Health from Temple University, focusing on social and behavioral science. As chair of ASCO's Diversity and Cultural Competency Committee, she leads efforts to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in optometry. Currently, she serves as clinical professor at UC Berkeley School of Optometry and Vision Science, where she is also involved in research on conditions like amblyopia, strabismus, myopia, and concussion-related vision disorders. Professor Shoge regularly delivers lectures and workshops, both nationally and internationally, and provides consulting services through her company. Thank you so much, Professor Ruth Shoge, and over to you.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come and speak with you. And thank you very much to Dr. Levi for connecting me to this group. We met for the first time at Academy this year. And I'm just really impressed with all of you so far, the interest, the motivation that you have. And I'm so excited to continue to stay connected to this group. I will share my slides now. And I will also be sending Dr. Levi a copy of the slides to distribute later on. And everyone can see my slides, okay?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. So what I'm going to talk about is the pathway to the PhD and opportunities for members of this organization. So just to give you a little bit of background about me, which Lele shared a little bit, I did earn my optometry degree at Pennsylvania College of Optometry in Philadelphia, now part of Drexel University, which makes it part of a larger university system with access to more than we had when it was a standalone school. I went on to complete my residency in pediatrics, binocular vision, vision therapy, and traumatic brain injury, and still see patients 1 day a week. About 10 years into my career, I was seeing, we were starting to see more patients who had brain injury in our clinic, in our binocular vision clinic. And the clinic in Philadelphia served a predominantly Black community. So I would say it was easily 90% Black. However, all of a sudden in this subset of patients, it was the inverse of that. So instead of people who are having traumatic brain injuries and strokes and other things, instead of that population being 90% Black, all of a sudden it was maybe 10% Black. And I didn't understand why we were seeing this disparity, because in theory, all people should have around the same prevalence and incidence when it comes to having brain injuries due to different reasons, car accident, athletic sports, things of that nature. So that question that I had is what led me to go back to school to pursue my master's in public health at Temple University, which is also in Philadelphia, because I wanted to understand better where the problem was originating. Was it because the patients didn't know from these different populations, they should have an eye exam, that they should go to a doctor, that they should really stay on top of any symptoms or signs that were resultant of having a brain injury? Was it the doctors that they maybe did see if they go to the emergency room that didn't then refer them or didn't stay on top of their care? Where was the breakdown in this healthcare in this population? And so asking that question, having that clinical research question in my mind that no one could really answer, similar to what Dr. Hassan said, is having a good clinical question that you can investigate will help the journey of either getting an additional degree, getting additional credentials, such as a fellowship, worthwhile. So in that journey, I really got more interested in health disparities because it's not something that was really part of my formal education when I was in optometry school. And all of that led to me taking on a role, being invited to apply for the role of the Chief Diversity Officer here at University of California, Berkeley, School of Optometry and Vision Science, which is where I currently am now. And so being interested in health disparities is one part of the puzzle. Making sure that we have a diverse workforce, we have a educated workforce that knows who understands health disparities and knows, better understands how we need to reach these different populations to improve the health of a community is important. So for me, doing this work in an academic setting means I have access to future doctors. I have access to students who I can start to teach the things that I didn't learn in school as a student on how to then be more conscious doctors, ask relevant questions, start to really figure out why are patients having differences in their healthcare outcomes. So that was a very short clip of my long journey on why I got here specifically. So just to clarify, I don't actually have my PhD. I have my optometry degree, my master's in public health, but I don't have a PhD. But being in an academic setting, working very closely with our admissions officers, I can provide some information about the process of what it looks like or what I should be thinking about if I want to pursue a PhD. So what is research exactly? So research is a systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. And so I like this graph here, and it's a little busy in terms of what it takes to be involved in research, but the summary of it is you should have a good idea or concept, especially something that's kind of fresh, something that hasn't really thoroughly been investigated. What is that idea and how do you formulate that into a research question? And then how do you prioritize your thoughts and your ideas? Because sometimes one thought can lead to many others. And how do you prioritize that? And then get involved in the planning before that, seeking mentorship, which isn't on this wheel. And then after that, many additional steps that comes to having a successful research project, including designing, getting funding, ethics approval, collecting the data, analyzing it, disseminating it, reevaluating it, is all important. So it's a long process, and I have a lot of respect for people who want to pursue their PhD and do research at this level. It's a very high level of science. I love being on the clinical side because I can take the research outcomes that these scientists get and then put it into practical practice. So identifying the gaps in research. And again, this kind of goes back to what Dr. Hassan mentioned, is that you really want to study something or have a research question that hasn't been looked into before. So what are the gaps? What are the gaps in your area of interest? Maybe you're interested in the cornea. Maybe you're interested in the retina. Maybe you're interested in the pediatric population. You want to look more broadly at population health. What are the gaps in your area, in your community? And what do you want to highlight to further investigate? What new technologies, what innovation is missing? What is the relevance in filling this gap? Sometimes people can have a good research question, but if it's not really going to benefit society, are we wasting time? Are we wasting resources? So these are important questions to ask. And what are the funding opportunities for answering these questions? So what is vision science specifically? So vision science is an interdisciplinary study of vision through broad exposure to the basic concepts and techniques used in specialized fields. And vision science is really, truly fascinating because, in the morning, I can have a conversation with a basic scientist who's really looking at things at a molecular level. And then, conversation with somebody who's trying to do clinical application and translational research. And then by evening, have a conversation who's trying to put this information and make it more of a public health application. So it's really interdisciplinary with many specialized fields that come together to create this field of vision science. It can involve laboratory-based or clinical research. And, research generally is interesting for people who want to answer the questions, well, why is this happening or how is this happening, right? If you ask those questions a lot, the PhD route might be good for you. So in vision science, students work with faculty advisors whose research matches their own interests. And as mentioned, there are many fields that come together to create vision science, and they include biomedical optics, clinical science, computational vision, molecular and cell biology, neuroscience and neurobiology. Probably neuroscience is the biggest background for people who are in vision science, and then perception and visual cognition. So there are approximately 25 schools in the US. I didn't research vision science programs outside of the US, so I can only give you a very narrow US-based view of schools with vision science programs. So please keep that in mind for my presentation. So there are approximately 25 schools, optometry schools total in the US, and 13, 14 of these schools offer a master's degree program, master's in science, and or PhD. Only 8 of those 13 or 14 actually offer a PhD program. So not many schools have a PhD in vision science opportunity. And I can't speak for all of these schools and what their specific requirements are, but you can certainly find that information online. And so, as you can see, University of Alabama, Arizona, Southern California College of Optometry, Berkeley, where I am, Nova in Florida, Chicago, Indiana, all have programs. Most of the programs are in vision science, so master's in science and vision science, PhD in vision science. Some of them, for example, the Arizona College of Optometry, they have a master's in science and precision medicine. So it's a little bit different. And then some of these schools allow you, while you're pursuing your optometry degree, to also pursue your master's. So you get this dual degree or combined degree by the time you graduate 4 years later. It's much harder to have a combined PhD and OD, although some schools report that they do offer that as an opportunity, such as SUNY and I think one other Pacific University in Oregon. The optometry degree, as you know, is very time-consuming and labor-intensive. So also pursuing a PhD at the same time, you'll definitely want to see if that's something that you would have capacity for in doing. And so I have the website here, optometriceducation.org, which is the ASCO website, the Association of Schools and Colleges of Optometry in the US, that can give you a little bit more information about these different schools and their program, and will likely lead you to the specific school's website so you can learn more about their programs. So some of the outcomes for people who pursue a PhD in terms of what do they want to do after they have this degree. Because, you don't get these degrees just because, maybe some people do, just as a personal achievement, but, what kind of work do you want to pursue after this degree? So academia is a choice. working for a biotech company, working for research industry, working for the federal government, and vision and optometry companies, for example, such as Johnson and Johnson, are ways that people can put their degrees to use. So what does vision science at Berkeley look like? So our faculty have research in multiple disciplines, all relating to vision science in unique ways. And this is just a small sample of our faculty and some of the research that they do. And again, you can visit our website, the Berkeley Vision Science website, where you can look through the different faculty profiles to see what kind of research they're doing. But for example, Dr. Cooper is doing visual encoding and perceptual graphics. Dr. Otero Milan is doing research on ocular motor control and eye movements. Dr. Rorda does research on high resolution retinal imaging and optics, which then can get adapted into the equipment that we use and provide very good resolution and optics with our slit lamps, for example. Dr. Susanna Chung does research on cortical adaptation, plasticity, and response to visual loss. So again, this is just a small sampling of some of the research that our faculty does, and you can find a little bit more online. And it's varied. So whatever small, niche interest that you have, more than likely there's a faculty member who has a similar interest or can guide you in your interest. So making sure you have that right connection is going to be important in your pursuit of a PhD. So our program, our PhD program typically takes students about 5 years. And so you can see here the breakdown by each year what is accomplished. So the first year you do your required coursework, your lab rotations. So the students are required to go to different labs, not all of them, because that would take too much time, but within their field of interest, and see which lab mentor they match with better, which research topics they match with better. And then they also start teaching as well in their first years. And so they become teaching assistants for our optometry program, actually. So those are how our two programs at the school overlap. In the second year, after you've done your lab rotations, you're then choosing your primary mentor. You're starting to dive deeper into your research, and you're also preparing and taking a qualifying exam. By your third year, once you've passed your qualifying exam, you actually advance to the PhD candidacy, and you are continuing to do your research. Fourth year, all research intensive. And by the fifth year, you're putting together your dissertation, defending it, and then hopefully, if everything is going well on time, you're also graduating. So our specific program outcomes, I gave kind of the general program outcomes before, but specifically for the Berkeley program. Our program began in 1950, and it's one of the oldest vision science programs in the country. And since then, we've had over 240 master's PhDs awarded, and we currently have about 42 students across the 5 years. And so where our students end up when they graduate, more than half of them elect to go into industry. So industry is a catch-all term to include biotech companies, optometry specific companies such as Johnson & Johnson, Supervision, and other industrial companies. And that makes sense for the area that we're in. Being in Northern California is very tech-centric. This is where Google is, Apple is, and many other tech companies. So it makes sense that most of our students end up wanting to be in an industry organization. And then a little less than half of them go into academia, who are here because they want to be professors, they want to teach, and they want to continue to work on their research. Okay. 80% of our students go on to receive their doctorates. Does not mean that the other 13% were unsuccessful. They would have completed their master's and perhaps for either life reasons, professional reasons, personal reasons, decided not to continue to pursue their doctorate or wanted to do a different area of study. So important admission state, and this is specific to our current admission cycle that we're in now. So if you're currently in optometry school, this would not be applicable to you for this admission cycle. However, it's good to just generally have in mind what our application cycle looks like. So our applications open in September, deadline is mid-January, and decisions are sent out by mid-March. Admissions requirements, you should have your bachelor's degree by the time of matriculation. For a PhD in vision science, you do not need to be an optometrist. You can go straight from your undergraduate degree to vision science, because not all vision scientists are clinicians. Some of them are. We don't, our faculty, I would say less than half are clinicians and PhD. So not a requirement. You have to submit a statement of purpose and personal history, 3 letters of recommendation, transcripts, 3 faculty advisor preferences. So once you've researched the faculty within the institution that you're applying to, list the ones that you think you would want to work with, and any other supporting materials such as a resume, curriculum vitae, any publications you've had. And then the TOEFL for international students. Student funding. Now, unfortunately, this slide does not necessarily apply to our international students. So for students who are US citizens, their program is typically fully funded, including tuition and fees, not housing, unfortunately, because it's covered by grants that our faculty apply.